So whenever the midwife ended up checking me and said, you're 10 centimeters, you're 100% effaced, I said, oh fuck, so this is it. Like, didn't I say that I was like, oh, I really can't get an epidural now? Like, just being fun. Then she's like, okay, well, how about we get into new positions so we can start getting ready to like push. And like after a little bit, my body started to like push naturally. And so I felt like my water break again. And I told my nurse, which she was like pretty new, I think. She was younger. And I was like, hi, I just felt, I definitely didn't say hi. But I was like, I just felt like my water break again. She was like, okay. So she like lifted up the blanket and she was like, oh, okay, I'll just get you like a new pad, whatever, it's fine. And then my midwife came in and I was like, my water just broke a little more. Because your water is like, it can be like a slow leak. That's kind of what mine was. Like it was just like a slow leak. And then I could feel like random like gushes where I knew it was like a little more. And my midwife came in and she was like, that has moderate meconium. Like you need to get the belly bands on to get the baby's heart rate and the baby's fetal movement. I was like, okay, that's fine. So they put the monitor on and she was like, okay, like the baby's doing good. But every time that I felt like I had to push, her heart rate was going down. So they were like, we should give you some fluids. Mind you, her heart rate was going down whenever I would push. Like that's a normal thing. Your baby's heart rate's going to fluctuate because that's stressful. Like your baby is literally getting forced out of their home for, you know, 9 months, however many months. So they end up giving me like the fluids and her heart rate went back to normal, which makes sense because I was dehydrated the whole time. So obviously if I'm dehydrated, the baby isn't getting what, you know, she needs either. Then she's like, okay, well, how about we get into new positions so we can start getting ready to like push and like to get the baby to come down like the birth canal. And so I was like, okay. So I got on like all fours and I was there for a little bit and I was pushing and I was like holding on to like the back of the bed, which that was actually my favorite way to push, but I wasn't really progressing. Like the baby wasn't moving any, like coming out. So she was like, okay, how about we try like side lying? So I went down side lying and I was kind of like holding on, you know, just lay on your side and try and push out a baby. And then she got me like pillows for my legs to try and like push that way. And I ended up actually being sideways in the bed, kind of sitting up a little bit. And then that's how I was pushing. Basically throughout my labor, I did like 4 different positions to push. And the one I liked the most, I was like reclined a little bit, but I was still sitting up. And then I was like legs spread, whatever. Right before she came out, she was obviously crowning and my midwife was like, oh, do you want to touch her? And I was just so focused on like getting her out. And I was like, no. Cause you could like, she had hair and stuff. So you could like see her hair. First, my luck, after whenever I started pushing, the midwife was holding like a warm washcloth like on my perineum. And it felt so nice. I didn't feel that ring of fire that like a lot of people feel whenever they're stretching. And I did not feel that whenever she had that warm washcloth. And the hot water on our floor went out like right at that same time. So there was no more hot water like on that entire floor. So I was literally like the one thing that is like easing this pain and they don't have any more. So I ended up, whenever I was like pushing, I could feel like that ring of fire, that stretching feeling. And it was a lot. And then they had, because of her meconium that was in like my water when it broke again, or when it was like leaking out, they had to have like the NICU doctors come up, and there was like a lot of them. So I didn't really realize it at the time. No, I didn't even realize that at the time. I was like so focused on like getting her out and like being able to like hold her and stuff that I didn't even realize there was like, what, like 10? There was like
more than that.
Yeah, there was a lot of doctors like in the corner setting up the station, like getting all of like the resuscitation stuff like ready for her. And then at 6:56, after almost 3 hours of pushing, she ended up coming out. And the first words I said were, oh my fucking God, she is so perfect. It was funny because my friend Mackenzie, who was taking Mac photography, follower, just kidding. Mackenzie told me that right after I pushed her out, like I went back to normal. So like while I was in labor, the entire time my eyes were closed and I was just in labor, like progressing how I wanted to, just letting my body do its thing. And so it was just so funny that right as soon as Zoe popped out, I was back to normal. I was like me again. There was only one time like throughout this entire like my entire labor, that I was like, I cannot do this. And I think it was during my transition period, and that is wherever you're going from 7 centimeters to 10 centimeters. And it was after the tub, and I was laying in bed again, and I looked at Harley, and I was just like, I cannot do this. And Harley was like, you have been doing this. And I was like, bitch, you right. After she came out, I did that skin to skin for an hour, and she was crying and her breathing was fine. Her APGAR scores, I think, wasn't the first one an 8? I think the first APGAR was an 8, and then they do the second APGAR, and I think it was a 9. So she was doing okay, despite the moderate meconium that was in like my water whenever it broke. My second midwife, she was like, okay, well, the cord isn't pulsing anymore. And I was like, okay, like I want to feel it. And so I was like feeling it. And then Harley got to cut the cord, and it was so, what did you say? Didn't you say it was like hard to cut?
Gross.
And I had like, yeah, she just said it was gross and it was like hard to cut. I think a lot of people don't realize after you give birth to your baby, give birth to a baby, you still have to give birth to the placenta. And so my second midwife started like tugging on the cord after it was cut and was like, oh, it's not coming out. I'll just let it come out naturally, which I don't know why the whole time she wasn't just gonna let it come out naturally. There's no reason to pull it. There's no reason for Pitocin. In most cases, like, you can birth your placenta naturally. So after a couple of minutes, I was like, oh, I have like that urge to push again. And it was like the smallest push, just like, and then it was out. It was, because it's like flimsy. It's not like a baby where you're like hard and solid. Like it was just, it's like giving birth to like a pound of like ground turkey or something. I don't know. I don't eat meat. So after I gave birth to my placenta, which everybody said was perfect, and I wanted to do placenta art, but everybody was like, no, don't do that. Next time I'm doing it because placenta art looks cool as hell. After I gave birth to the placenta, was basically just hanging out with the baby, and you know, she got her weight, she got her height, and she was 21 inches and she was 7 pounds and 5 ounces. And after a while, they did like the massage, which is where they basically just like press on your stomach, and it feels like, I feel like that hurt worse than actual labor, for real. Harley said like whenever they did like the fundal massage or whatever, that it looked like if you turn on a bathroom faucet, she said like blood like came out of my vagina, and it was just like a bathtub of like blood just like everywhere.
You're gross.
So of course my luck, after whenever I started pushing, the midwife was holding like a warm washcloth like on my perineum, and it felt so nice. I didn't feel that ring of fire that like a lot of people feel whenever they're stretching, and I did not feel that whenever she had that warm washcloth. And my luck, the hot water on our floor went out like right at that same time, so there was no more hot water like on that entire floor. So I was literally just like, my fucking luck, like the one thing that is like easing this pain, and they don't have any more. So I ended up, whenever I was like pushing, I could feel like that ring of fire, that stretching feeling, and it was a lot. So after we did, you know, the height, the weight, everything, and we were in there, the delivery room for a couple hours, we ended up getting taken back to our actual room, which a lot of people don't realize. You do not stay in the room that you give birth in a hospital.
Yeah, you go to a dungeon.
You go, like, our room afterwards was like so small, and we were just
bad looking.
It was just crazy because you could hear like the babies in the other rooms crying like all night. And we got lucky. Ever since day one, Zoe has always slept, not throughout the night, but she goes to sleep when we sleep. So that is the end of my birth vlog. And we will be posting a video, and Harley will be in it, and we will talk about actually the process of getting pregnant and like what we went through before. Yeah, the real star of the show, Harley. And well, the real star of the show is Zoe, let's be real. Anyway, and just remember, nobody can tell you how to give birth, where to give birth, when to give birth. Your body will know when it's ready. And listen to your midwives, listen to your other sisters, listen to your mothers, your fathers, listen to your partners, listen to your own self. Most importantly, if you feel like something's right, if you feel like something's wrong, that's who you should really be listening to, is yourself internally. And I hope everybody has the birth that they want. And if not, you can reach out to me and I can help you find resources where you're at about having a natural birth, having a birth that is what you want. And thanks for watching. You open yourself up to more infections. So she checked me and she said, you're 10 centimeters, you're 100% effaced, I can feel her head, you can push whenever. And I was like, no, like I don't feel like I'm gonna push. And she was like, okay, that's fine. So after a little bit, I was like, oh, I'm starting to get that urge.